Hello, everybody, and welcome to the So One Singing Ladies LLG Random But Real Wednesday Word on Word Wednesday. I'm excited because I have my friend again here, Sherrell Jones Whitfield. We were speaking after our last one, and we thank so many of you all for watching the replay of it. You can always go back to my YouTube page, YouTube/One Singing Lady spelled out, to watch any of these lives that I do. And a lot of people had a really nice comments and just encouraging statements. And so we appreciate that. But as we were speaking, we started talking about other topics. And like I said, I don't know what God is doing. I planned on only doing this for the month of September for Suicide Prevention Month. But I guess God had a different plan. And I guess y'all enjoy listening to my guests and what they have to say. So we're going to take that for that and, kind of go with it from there. So with that being said, as you all can see, I'm playing around with things. I'm usually always doing a little bit of everything because that's what you have to do when it's just one person doing everything. Nonetheless, we were talking last time, and with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is why we're wearing our pink today. I do believe, and I tweeted about this, that you don't have to have the disease to educate yourself. And I feel the same way about mental health. You don't have to have a mental health diagnosis to educate yourself. It's time to do that. And so, but it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And as Sherrell and I were speaking, being a counselor in the past, mental health and emotional health is just important to me around other topics and not just specifically mental health. And so today we're going to talk about that topic as it pertains in just relationships in general. So this is not just for marriage, and it's not just for a significant other. Some people could be in situationships and still be in a domestic situation. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to let Sherrell introduce herself. As you all may hear in the background, it's my friend and I, Stefan Terry, singing my song, My Prayer to God. And so it's going to fade out a little bit, but while Sherrell introduces herself. So thanks for coming, Sherrell, again.
Welcome. Thanks for having me again. And I hope you aren't tired of hearing from me yet.
I don't think they are. I don't think they are at all.
I certainly have a lot to share, and I'm glad that God has placed things on my heart, testimonies to give and to share, and I'm grateful for your platform because you are helping a lot of people.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So, I'm Sherrell Whitfield. I'm supposed to be introducing myself.
Yes.
And this discussion is near and dear to my heart. I have been in 2 relationships where I endured domestic violence. Not in the common sense that people are used to, physical violence. I didn't experience any physical violence, but I did emotional. And, a lot of people don't regard that emotional abuse as domestic violence. And so the reason why it's so dear to my heart is because I don't think a lot of times in our culture, in our society, that we give enough value to the damage that emotional abuse can do. And so as a mother, as a woman of God, as a business owner who connects with women all the time, and also having all kinds of conversations with them, the opportunity to have these kinds of discussions often.
Thank you. So before we go on, I'm just going to ask if you can just turn up your mic just a little bit, because you're kind of going in and out, but I just want to make sure everybody hears everything that you have to say clearly.
Okay.
Sing a note so I can know you're Go ahead and sing a note for me. I guess I put you on the spot. Okay, you can say it.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn up the volume.
Okay, it should be a speaker at the bottom. As y'all know, anybody that's seen me or been on here, I'm informal. So we're not like everybody else. We're going to do what we got to do while we're doing it, even though we did things prior to, but we just want to make sure that you hear everything that's being said.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
I just talk louder.
That's fine too. So Miss Lorna said that it is hard to hear. So we're trying. We'll try to work it out. Okay. It could also be Wi-Fi. I know I've had a lot of Wi-Fi issues this week, just in general. I know you're supposed to be connected, but where my box is, it's not. It's in an open space, so it's better for me to do it here. Nonetheless, we will try to be as loud as we can. Thanks for watching, Lorna. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is, I consider emotional abuse mind games as well. Sometimes it's bullying, sometimes it's, just demeaning a person. These are people that they're supposed to love you, but yet they say negative things to you. And so I was explaining to Sherrell about a situation where I was dating this guy, and like, I think I'm fat, y'all, but some people may not, but I have a stomach, so that's fat to me. Anyway, this guy that I knew was saying, thanks, she can hear, was saying that he was just like, you could be a model. This guy I know that was in the acting field, and he modeled, and whatever. He knows like some big players. He's been in movies and all other stuff. He was like, you're beautiful. You could actually be a model, because at the time I was 6'1". The doctor already said gravity started hitting, and I'm 5'11" now, or maybe almost 5'10". I can't believe it, but it's true.
Wow.
So, the guy I was seeing at the time had the nerve to say, yeah, you could be giving a stomach. Like, first of all, there are big women models, plus size models as they're called. So maybe I would have been one of them. And the way that he was coming at me, really, it was disheartening. And then another situation with another guy, I have adult acne. I still do. In fact, you might not see it, but it's a pimple right there now. And so thank goodness it's not as bad as it has been. I've been what I call myself pizza face, because they've been really grotesque pimples, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I don't feel attractive at the time. I know they're there. Trust me, if I could wash it off more than I tried, if I could use another saline or another rinse, I would have. And he was like, ugh, what happened to your face? Like, this is somebody supposed to care about me. And so those are still just maybe not as deep versions of emotional and mental abuse in a relationship, but they are still those things. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this with you, Sherrell. So can you share, or are you willing to share some of your experiences just, with or about those topics?
Oh, absolutely. In reference to what you were just saying about, the comment that a friend of yours made, and, it may not be that deep, of emotional abuse, but I think sometimes that dismissal sometimes causes us to ignore the damage that really occurs. So it may not seem deep. It doesn't have to be deep, but it's any pattern of behavior that can cause someone to be emotionally unhealthy. And so put downs, criticism, threats, discounting behavior, just simply ignoring someone, that kind of behavior could be is are all examples of
Did you see how irritated I became right there? I can't stand that. Okay.
behavior, rejecting someone, withholding your love, withholding support, as a bargaining chip, or just in retaliation, those kinds of things that's emotional abuse. And we don't coin it for what it really is. And so a lot of times it just continues, it gets worse, and we begin to accept it. And I went through those. I went through a lot of criticism in both relationships. They were extremely critical, harsh. There was always this black and white world where it was either their way or the wrong way. And so if things weren't done the way that they saw that they should and needed to be done, then your way of doing things was wrong, and it could really start to damage your self-esteem over time. It really can.
Yes, and because this is always going to have a mental health spin, I think that, like you said, a lot of people only make the connection of physical, like well, you're just getting beaten. And so that means it's not doing anything. And I just want to say, so yes, even if you are being physically abused, there's still an emotional component even related to that. Because now you're thinking about, well, what are people thinking about me when they see this mark, or what's going to happen when something else takes place. And I would go as far to say it's not always I wasn't planning on saying this, but it's not always just your significant others that are abusing you.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
experienced it in my family. And sometimes when I reached out for help, it was because it wasn't a domestic situation that I couldn't even find help for the situation that I was in. And I think that we as a community need to do better about abuse. Like, so we might have elderly abuse, but we have it for the elderly that are being victims. What about the elderly that are victimizing? We have, domestic violence for a lot of females who have been victim, but there's some males who have been victims of domestic violence as well.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And I think it's probably a little bit more difficult for a man to say, hey, my wife or my significant other or my, is beating me. Um, but I think that we need to stop thinking that you're a punk if you say something about it. Like, abuse is abuse is abuse, and it's all wrong.
But Tulisa, what I've come to understand is that a lot of times people really don't know what it is that they're experiencing. They can't put their finger on it. They know that they're hurting. They know that it doesn't feel good. That's what I went through. I knew that I was hurting. I knew that certain things that were being said and certain things were being done. I knew that it it damaged me in some way, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. I was, and then sometimes you might start thinking you're crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, is it me? And a lot of times the person who is the perpetrator of the abuse, they they won't acknowledge what they're doing. They'll say it's I'm just joking. A lot of times they'll call you sensitive, or
Or they'll say, don't be so emotional, which makes me even more emotional.
yeah,
Right.
or they'll tell you you're tripping. Stop tripping. You're tripping. You're over exaggerating. It's all of these words that they use to try to cover up their motive and their behavior. So it makes you think that there's something wrong with you and that
Mhm.
what they're doing is okay. But
Absolutely.
something within me knew that it was wrong. I knew that it didn't feel good. And I started reading. I needed to read because I had to find a way to try to get through this, because I could feel like my own self-esteem and self-worth start to diminish, even though I knew that it wasn't me. I knew it was, the person. And I also could see a change in my children. My
Mhm.
children shifted from being these um, vibrant um, children who could easily have a conversation with anybody. They were confident, they were self assured, they could be placed in any situation with an adult or a child and handle themselves. And they changed from to feeling like they were worthless. Everything they did was wrong. They were failures. And it all was as a result of criticism, emotional abuse. Not just the criticism, but the whole realm of emotional abuse that comes along with it. Sometimes people have, different behaviors here and there that could be emotionally abusive. And sometimes you end up, in relationship with someone who almost all of their behavior can be abusive.
Mhm.
So we were dealing with it at a very high magnitude, and I could see the changes within them as well as myself. And so I started reading and I started reading, and I found this wonderful book. If anyone on the line is dealing with this, it was called The Verbally Abusive Relationship, and it was written by two psychologists. I think it was Patricia Evans, if I'm remembering correctly. And when I read the book, it was like I have blinders lifted off of my eyes. She listed all of the behavior patterns that was emotionally abusive. She described examples of what this behavior pattern actually is. She also went as far as to explain why it makes you feel so terrible. And I could identify with almost every single symptom of emotional abuse that she listed in this book. And at that point, I felt validated. At that point, I knew that what I was experiencing, it wasn't just me, and that there were other people experiencing it, and that it was wrong. And she even gave suggestions on how to respond, um, and not responding in a way that could make it worse, but to respond in a way to get the abuser to realize what their behavior is doing to you and to make a commitment to change it. And then if that person didn't make the commitment to change it, then she gave you guidance on how to make a decision on what you're going to do about it, whether or
Right.
not you're going to stay and tolerate it or not. It blessed my life.
That's
It
good.
blessed my life.
I think that's a good segue. I just want to read that. This is from Very Well Mind. It's an article, verywellmind.com. You all can find it. It says, what is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse is a way to control another person by using emotions to criticize, embarrass, shame, blame, or otherwise manipulate another person. In general, a relationship is emotionally abusive when there is a consistent pattern of abusive words and bullying behaviors that wear down a person's self-esteem and undermine their mental health. um, it's one of the hardest, this is what the article says, hardest forms of abuse to recognize. It can be subtle and insidious or overt and manipulative. Either way, it chips away at the victim's self-esteem and they begin to doubt their perceptions and reality. And that's exactly what Sherrell actually explained. Dr. Braxey says, if terror and fear are constant feelings within any relationship, that means that there is a major problem. How do we get to a place where our safety is more important to us than our loneliness? Let me just say first, I don't know that it's always because of loneliness that people stay. Um, but that is a very good question because you do have to weigh that. I've heard, being in the counseling field for 20 years, sometimes it's the financial aspect of things. So the fear of now I have a family to take care of, so I know it's my life and this is important, but I also have my children's lives that I need to take care of. And how am I going to financially handle all of the things that come along with this? The shelters, if you've never been in one, are rough. Yes, I thank God for them, the opportunity. But sometimes the things that you see in movies, it's not too far off. Some of them don't have places where they can stay all day, every day, rebuild, get a job, all that other stuff. Some of them do have to leave and come back. Some beds are taken. Sometimes there's not enough beds for the situations that are happening. So that's a really good question. My stance has always been, and some people don't agree with this, but I'm going to tell y'all anyway. I believe that God's choice for marriage, specifically in marriage, not just in relationship, but if you're married, that he did not want divorce to take place. However, a lot of times the signs and symptoms were there before the person got married and they just didn't heed to them. But he still wants you to be safe. He wants you to use wisdom. I don't believe that wisdom definitely means divorce. And a lot of people disagree with this Christian person when I say that. You get to safety, but that does not necessarily mean that you're supposed to divorce, because sometimes we put ourselves in that situation. We need to see what God is going to do. So you don't just get to be scot-free because you decided to go ahead and go your own way and get into this marriage. And now the person is abusive. What about, looking at this situation before you get into it? Number two, with a relationship, you don't really have to stay. It is no paper. It is no, binding agreement. But a lot of times, the underlying thing that I've seen and what couples have shared with me is finances. What do you feel about that? Any of that? Anything that Miss Lorna said? Anything that I've said? Um,
Well, I certainly agree that I certainly agree that God would prefer for us to stay together. That is his wish for marriage, that we are joined together as one and we stay together as one till death does us part. I also believe that you have to get yourself to a place of safety. I
Absolutely.
also believe that death occurs in many ways. You know, death occurs emotionally, spiritually, and physically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I believe that when there's a point of no return, a lot of times you have no choice.
Sever the tie. Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. And, having said that, to do your best to work things out,
Mhm.
and that's what we did. That's what I did, you know, did my best to work things out. And as a matter of fact, when I left the relationship, my intention was to just get to a safe place
Mhm.
because there was a specific incident that was a catalyst, and it made me so afraid that it was going to turn from emotional to physical.
Mhm.
And so we left,
Okay.
and didn't take anything, just
Wow.
left. And so, my prayer was, okay, we can get help, we can get through this. But, the help was never received.
Mhm.
There was promises made, there were things that were said of what was going to be done, and it just wasn't done. And then time just kept going by and kept going by. And even in separation, the abuse continued to occur. It even got
Mhm.
worse in terms of it was like a power, it was a struggle, a power struggle, manipulation, so much so to the point where our well-being, both mine and the children, weren't even a concern,
Consider. Mm.
wasn't even a concern.
Yeah.
And that was
I have to be
devastating.
a scary place. And trust me, when I say, just so you know, when I say you, I'm not talking about you, Sherrell. I'm saying a general you.
Oh, it is.
I don't know what I would do if I were in the situation because I haven't been married. I've been in situations where I've definitely felt belittled and manipulated or manipulated and talked down to and demeaned. And it's not a good feeling. It's not at all. But I can't imagine what I would do if I were in the situation and I had other people that I had to also consider. And so like I'm assuming that your faith helped you a lot through
Oh my
that.
goodness, girl.
Can you speak about that a little bit?
It was what kept me. It was what saved me. That was where I found my safe place. That was my safety net. Because, I had even in my ear ministers saying, go back, work this out.
I did not say that. You didn't hear me say that.
Well, I mean,
So
I had family members who said, well, that's all he did, because they figured if it wasn't physical, then it wasn't that big
that's
of a
not
deal.
right.
But
And
not really
see how
realize
people feel that way? It's just like with the mental health. It's a catalyst for danger to me.
it
It's
is.
over, our maybe not. No, I'm not even gonna lie. From what I heard, and I don't know how my family's gonna feel about this, but I was told that my maternal grandfather was not the nicest person in the world. I'll put it that way. And I believe he was probably abusive towards my grandmother. My grandmother was the sweetest lady ever, and she would not do anything to hurt a fly. And let's just say, I mean, his name was Boozer,
Mhm.
and he literally would like literally get lit all the time. This is things that I've been told. He died before I was born, so like I said, this is just what I was told. And I feel like that generation just all they knew to do was stay. They may have slept in different bed. Not them. I have another family member. They slept in different bedrooms.
Well, and but my other issue too was that they didn't understand the depth of what I was going through because I lived with it. I'm the one who experienced it. I could say, I was experiencing emotional abuse, but to even describe the type of abuse, because to describe how it's done in a
Mhm.
quiet way, in a not so quiet way, in a subtle and blatant, there were extremes of the measures of the emotional abuse and the damage. And so it's hard to explain to other people what you
This is
are experiencing, and
Mhm.
so that's what drove me to that's what drove my faith. That's what drove me to get answers from God, because I knew that I could not go back to that environment. I knew that I couldn't take my children back in there. I knew it. But then you have all these people telling you this is a good person. And he wasn't a bad person at all. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been together. But there were poor behaviors.
Mhm.
There was unhealthy behavior. There was behaviors that was damaging me down in my
Mhm.
soul and my
Mhm.
kids, and so that had to be taken care of. That had to be either changed or I had to depart from it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I totally understand. Like, even though I understand, like, it's a hard decision, and I think whether it's marriage or just or a regular relationship, it's still hard when you love a person to have to make the decision to leave. But a lot of times it's because they won't get the help that they need. Again, why I'm such a proponent of counseling and therapy. I
Yeah.
I'm at a place now with one of my friends. If they call me and they tell me that, most of them know I was a counselor. We're not supposed to counsel our friends, but I'm not going to be dumb and just be like, oh, whatever, go see somebody. But I will not anymore help if you're not willing to go get your help. I will listen, but there's counseling out there. Some people are getting it for free, especially now
Mhm.
during the pandemic. There's
Mhm.
no excuse for you not willing to get therapy so that you can change some of your behaviors, so that you can help live.
That's
So if
right.
a person doesn't want to do that, then they probably just don't want to do it, and it's not important to them. And so that, for me, I wash my hands.
Mhm.
I had to get to that point because there's so many people walking around bruised, broken, disgusted. I literally have to fight to stay sane because of diagnosis. And
Yeah.
you get help and you don't want to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I pray for you and keep going.
That's right. Absolutely. Mhm.
Pray
And
for you and keep
and by
going.
the time I think, um, I mean, I just searched. I searched the scriptures because I wanted to make the right decisions for me and the kids, and I also wanted to be obedient to what it is that the Lord wanted me to do.
Hmm.
So I had to. It was a time in my life where I had to really be still. I had to really, really be still, and that stillness, that quiet time, is how I was able to hear from God. Just reading the word, praying. You know, I didn't have a lot going on, but I had support. Support matters. I had my support from my mom, my church family, my friends, and so that support helped. But I needed the quiet. I needed to really, really, because sometimes people want to help you so much that it kind of, it
It
kind of,
muffles everything. It's like,
yeah, it does, and you just can't hear clearly and you get confused. And, I just had to make the right decision. So I think that's where my faith really became stronger. It became so strong because I began to have an understanding about things that I didn't before. And it changed me. It
Mhm.
changed me. It wasn't just, what I was going through as a result of my relationship, but I had to recognize some things about my own self, that needed to be changed as well.
Yes. Lorna just said, and this is so true, that how most jobs have EAP programs, which is true. It's counseling, it's confidential, it's free. Usually it's like 3 or 4 sessions, but that's enough to get you started, and they can refer you to something else.
Mhm.
Um, and she was saying that they only report the number of people like utilizing the service, but they don't. It's confidential. That's the thing about counseling. Unless you're a harm to yourself or someone else, then we don't have to say anything. But if you disclose that you're harming yourself or someone else, then we have to say something. And I just want to go back and say, keep saying, because some people don't know that I have PTSD, and you know what I'm saying, or that I was diagnosed at one point with depression, anxiety. And so although that has not been the depression, anxiety has not been overwhelming at this point, there have been times during this period, this September 26th when my mom got sick, to October 13th when she actually died, that it's been really traumatic for me. So I just want y'all to know I'm not crazy, but I'm honest about my own walk and why I'm so passionate about mental health and or mental illness, and letting people know that you can present like this and still have plenty of underlying issues, and it's really important to go get help. So I just want to clarify that. One of the things that this article, and I'm just going to put that in the chat so you can look it up, and it's about emotional health, but it quotes this. Says emotional, or I'm quoting this, emotional abuse can even impact friendships because emotionally abused people often worry about how people truly see them and if they truly like them. And I know I see you smiling. Like, it's crazy. Like, even though we had different situations, but I know I've thought about that. It's almost like the people pleasing thing, you know, just like, well, I really want you to like me, so I'm going to do this. But maybe you really don't. Maybe you're lying to me when you say that. Maybe you say you really don't care. Like Sherrell and I've had several conversations because I've said so many of my friends have abandoned and rejected me, and I'm like, well, what did I do to them for them to do that? And so I was saying how, like, if I was on the side of the road somewhere, like, I don't have anybody to call. She's like, you don't think I would come pick you up if you were stranded? And she was yelling at me. And I was just like, well, you know, with the way you're saying it now, I think that, but I didn't think that before. And so what do you think about that quote that, you know, it can impact your friendships and the trust that you have with other or for other people?
It absolutely can. Because it causes you to be insecure in ways, because you're kind of you reach for, validation.
Mhm.
Basically, that's what you're looking for. In my case, I always sometimes feel like I have a point to prove. Like
Mhm.
that's like it's like you're gonna listen to me. Like I realize that I have this need to be heard. You know,
Mhm.
more so than anything else. That's what my struggle is. And so sometimes I can probably take things out of context, or outside of what's how someone means it, because I want to make sure that I'm being listened to. I want to make sure that my opinion, my ideas, my thoughts, my vision, my dreams are not being ignored, are not being discounted, are not being erased,
Mhm.
that they're valued.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where I reach sometimes, in relationships.
So
Um,
how you trying to draw that, like, so that it's a balance? What are you doing to try to get to that point?
I try not to react. I try to be quiet. I try to put things into perspective, and I talk to myself.
Mhm.
I literally have to, that song. Sometimes you have to,
Encourage yourself.
sometimes you
Yep.
have to encourage yourself. I
Yep.
have to encourage myself.
Yep.
And when there's nobody around me, I have to say the truth about the matter, the reality of what it is. This is
Mhm.
true. This is a fact. This is a fact. This is a fact. What you're thinking may not be a fact. So I have to
Right.
talk myself out of going there before I respond.
Mhm.
Because
Absolutely.
sometimes I just respond, and it's not always
Not
fair.
very good. Okay, I wanted to read this again, and just so you know, like this article was reviewed by Amy Moore and LC SW, which is licensed social worker, clinical social worker. I am not saying that this is the end all, a be all of emotional abuse. I just thought it was a really good, I guess, way to look at emotional abuse. It's almost like a good outline for this article. So one of the things that it said, because we don't want to give you all the things that happen and don't be like, okay, this is what you might be able to do to try it to change. So one, it says make yourself a priority, which I absolutely agree with. Do you?
Absolutely. Oh yes, absolutely. Because then when you make yourself a priority, you're valuing yourself in a way that you're wanting other people to value you. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're helping to build up your own self-worth, and you're not looking to other people to do that for you. And so
Right.
when you walk in confidence, you know what I mean? And things don't bother you as much as they would. You're not as tender. You know, I'm
Mhm.
not as tender when I'm moving to my own rhythm and my own beat and my own drum, you know?
Mhm.
And another thing too, it helps. I know that I always say this, and I know that it might sound cliche. And trust me, I'm not trying to just sound cliche, but it really, really works. When you read scripture, there's so much scripture that talks about God's love for us and who we are in him. And when I read those scriptures and I read about how much he really loves us and the sacrifices that he made and what he promises us, and I think about what he's done for me, and I know how that does wonders for my self-esteem. You know, because
We
you
were
can spend time
definitely.
wallowing, yeah, you can spend time wallowing in what things that you think and not feeling good about yourself, but when you read that and you know in your heart that it's the truth, it really strengthens you. It gives you a strength. It builds you up. It holds you. It's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were fearfully and wonderfully made. That's scripture he talks about, and self care goes along with making yourself a priority. And I think it's so hard for some of us, especially women, to like have so like my male friends will be like, I'm going to the barber shop. Like they do it like I'm washing my car. Like religiously, but us we be like, no, I gotta do this for this person. I gotta
Yeah,
do this for this person.
that
We
is so
gotta
true.
actually make us a priority. The next thing they say is establishing boundaries. I know for me, that is something that I am really, really working on. I have worked on, and
Yes.
I'm to the point where like I literally had to tell myself, nah, I don't care. Like, not that I don't care about the person, but I can't let that be more important than me, than the vessel that God created me
Yeah.
to. And so, you
That's
know,
something that I just learned within maybe like the last 2 years or so,
mm,
about creating boundaries. And that's another thing about myself that I realized that, I had boundaries, but I would waver. They would become shady, they would become gray, and it's really important to not just have boundaries,
but
but to
keep
stay true to them. Yeah. Honor
that is like literally it says, do not communicate boundaries that you have no intent of keeping.
That's right.
The funk. Stop acting like you big and bad if you're not going to do it
That's right.
all the time. Like if you're not going to actually discipline the child, don't say that you're going. I'm gonna do. No, like if you don't want this person raising their voice at you, tell them that.
Hmm.
To them, stop talking to me like this, or this is going to be. It has to be a consequence for the action
That's exactly
you're
right.
saying, or I'm gonna walk away, or I'm gonna go into a different room, or you know what I mean. We really do teach people how to treat us,
That's
but a
right.
lot of us are so quiet in whatever it is that we're saying. We don't speak up, and that goes back to being a priority. You know what I'm saying? You have a voice. Speak up.
That's right. And it
Speak
has
up.
to be a consequence that is meaningful. It has to be a consequence that's going to help exhibit change. It
Right.
has to, we have to do that from the beginning, you know,
Hmm.
S-
Yeah.
whether that means remove yourself from that person or remove communication for a little bit or whatever
Mhm.
the case may be. But you're
Right.
absolutely right. There
Not
has
just
to be
threat, but actually a promise, but not in the sense of if you don't do, it should be a conversation. It doesn't have to be an argument. But if you are at that place, wherever it is, then make sure if you're going to say something, that you're backing it up. I would say though, if it's something when it comes to you've made the decision to roll or leave, you might not want to share that with the person who is, especially physically. um,
yeah,
Even emotionally, because they'll still hold it over your head. So be smart in what it is that you are saying, but stand up for yourself.
that's
Another
right.
is to stop blaming yourself. I'm still working on that. What do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with that. And blaming yourself, I think it goes beyond just blaming yourself for maybe their behavior. But
Mhm.
blaming yourself for me, looked like blaming myself for allowing myself to be in that relationship. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
absolutely. That's how I feel. Yeah. How did you do this? Why would you? For me, why am I so stupid? You already know that. Like just playing that whole thing would still deals with your mental health over
Yeah,
and over in your head. Yeah,
yes, and
not good.
yes, and since you saw the signs, and why didn't you listen, and why didn't you do what you're doing now? Then
Right.
just yeah, and that also that does the same thing that being in the abusive relationship does. It just
Mhm.
tears down your self-worth. You
Mhm.
making yourself not feel good enough about your own self.
Right. And we can't. Another thing they say is, realize you can't fix them. We can't. We can't fix another person. And even if we did not see the signs, we still did not cause them to emotionally abuse us. That was
Right.
a choice that they made, just like your choice is to respond in whatever way that you respond. So, that's another one. It says avoid
But
engage. Go
real
on.
quickly before you move on, because it's in reference to what you were saying. I
Mhm.
also I went through this where I felt like I went through this issue where I felt like I was just too nice and that I needed to change. I felt like I allowed people to treat me a certain kind of way. And now, maybe I shouldn't be that way. And
Mm.
that's not healthy either because,
To change who you are.
while you while you do have to have boundaries and you should stick to your boundaries and adhere to them and enforce them, but you still have to the whoever God created you to be, that kind-hearted, forgiving, nurturing, compassionate type person, he created me to be that way for a reason, and that's who I am. And so for me
Mhm.
to change that because I have a fear of being involved with someone who's going to take advantage of that, that's also not healthy, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so it says avoid engaging. Don't engage with the abusive person, like I was saying even before. Even and I would say with your verbal comments as well as your physical comments. If someone insults you, it's still your choice to stay or walk away from it, until it gets to that point. Like you might have to take some deep breaths. You might have to always have your keys next to you. You might always have to have, which is one of the things it says is work on an exit plan and building a support network, which is one of the things you talked about before, having healthy friends, not people that, this is my, if a person is telling you to stay in a situation where it's unhealthy or return to a situation where it's unhealthy, are they really your friend? I think you have to really think about that. Are they might be your family because they're blood, but that does not mean that that's smart advice. You know.
Right. I wouldn't say that that person isn't necessarily your friend, but people have their own perspective of things. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And my family member who said what she said, she was abused by men in her life.
Mhm.
And so, and she was, so there was a sense of normalcy for her.
But
So,
that's not okay.
but it's
That's
not
my whole
okay.
point though.
Right.
So if
But
you're
it
my
doesn't
friend,
mean, but it doesn't mean that she's not a friend or not a loved one. I don't believe that that means that a person doesn't care about you
I didn't say that they don't care. To
or
me,
that they're not a friend or they're not a
person,
loved
we'll have to agree to disagree because you're still my loved one. But if you are truly my friend, you are not going to put me in harm's way. Period. Now you may make bad
Like,
decisions.
what if she's not thinking
Let me
she's
finish
putting you
first.
in
Let me
harm's
finish Sherrell first. Let me finish, please.
way? Go
You
ahead.
may make bad decisions. You may make bad choices. You may actually encourage somebody to do something that's negative. I've done that in my life, but you are not showing me friendship by putting me in a situation. Now, it doesn't mean for life, but that particular thing, nobody that truly cares about somebody is going to want harm for another person. Now, we may not want to think of it as that, but if you really look at the breakdown of it, if you truly care about me, It doesn't mean that I didn't tell you the wrong thing, or I can't make the decision. But if you truly care about me, you're not going to want me to be in harm's way. So in that particular situation, you were not being my friend. You were not showing me friendship. You were not meeting me at the point of my needs. You were meeting me based on your perception. And those are two different things to me. But continue.
What if that person is not thinking that she's putting you in harm's way? That's my point. If you've lived a lifestyle that was normal for you and it was okay, and not only that, but society says it's okay, you're in the mind frame of thinking that there's no big deal. There's no problem. I'm not putting her in harm's way. I'm helping her keep her family together. I don't see how that, and I'm not saying that that's right, is definitely wrong, which is why I needed to be still and quiet and listen to what the Lord was telling me. But what I am saying that I don't believe that means that person is not a friend to you.
Okay. And like I said, we can agree to disagree. I guess even though, again, because everything I bring back will be back into mental health. One of my friends today, I happened to be talking to that I went to college with, I was telling him, we were just talking about mental health, and he was just like, Black people, he's a Black person, feels like mental health, or it's admitting that you have mental health issues is a sign of weakness. He was like, and I am one of those people. And I'm saying, and I say to him, that is crazy, because he knows that I have, that we've diagnosis. He knows about my story. He knows about rape, abuse, molestation. He knows about all the things I've experienced. So I'm not saying he's not a friend in general, but he is not being a friend when it comes to that topic and supporting me in this. Now, if he told me, Lisa, you should not ever go to therapy because that's a sign of weakness, he is not my friend. He can't be my friend and know that I've struggled with whether I'm taking my life or saving my life and put me in harm's way. To me, mental health therapy is not even, it's not a choice. Like at some point in my life, off and on, I have to get it. And if you know me, generally know me, you know that that's something that I need so that I can continue to actually do things like this. But it's okay. We can agree.
Right, because this is good. But your experience, though, has led you to growth that you didn't have even before, as a result of what you've been through in life, as a result of your training, your education as a counselor, and even in your profession. You have grown to learn this. And not everyone has gotten there. There's a level of ignorance that people don't have. And so I just have a tough time really just kind of saying that a person isn't your friend because they haven't reached a level of growth that you've reached. You could be the person to bring them to that understanding.
Or
and
it's like a rock.
If you're not, someone else can.
Maybe.
But what I'm saying is, I just don't believe that deems that person is not a friend to you because they don't have the same level of understanding that you have. I didn't know what I now know before I went through what I went through. I may have encouraged someone to do something differently, at a time span before I experienced the emotional abuse, before I experienced the separation in my relationships. I may have given someone different advice than what I would give them today. Does that mean that I wasn't their friend back then when I gave them different advice? No, that means that I was ignorant. That means I didn't have a level of understanding, and I was basing my advice based on what I thought I knew in my perspective.
I can see your point. I mean, I'm not saying I don't see your point. I just think there are some things for me that are black and white. And if you know that me going back to a place could cause me harm, then that to me is not showing yourself friendly. Yeah. Even the Bible says a brother loves all time, friend shows himself friendly. Like that's even scripture. So if you're not showing yourself friendly to me, I've done some really terrible things in my life. And I two people who were supposed to be my friends. But when I look back on it, I can admit that I was not a friend to them. And I think that that's the baseline of the discussions that that we need to have, because we don't want to get, it's hard to admit that this person is not being a friend to me because they didn't do X, Y, and Z. I think that's a really hard thing to say. Who wants to say that? Or this person is not being a great relative to me because they're doing X, Y, and Z. But the truth is, they are doing X, Y, and Z. That's fact. And them not doing this is causing this harm to me. So you are not being who I feel like the definition of family or friend is. Terrence says, as a veteran, we think that way. We are taught to never give up or end. So admitting weakness is not a part of our DNA. Thank you for sharing that. I get that. I guess my perspective, because even before I ever became a counselor, I didn't want to become a counselor. This was not my intent. My intent. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be a minister. Not my intent. I didn't want to help people in this way. I always was a helper. I always found myself listening to people. People would come to me and tell me their problems, and I didn't want to know it, but they would come to me anyway. So I was doing it informally before I ever was educated, before I ever got a master's degree in it. But I know specifically, and it's not usually my female friends. Most of it has been my male friends who have told me that is weak, or you don't need any help, or you don't, not talking about me, but just people. If you commit suicide, then you're weak. It takes a lot more than people know for someone to actually sit there and take the gun and pull the trigger or stab themselves or cut themselves. Or it takes a lot of, they are being tortured mentally, neurological issues. It's so much bigger than just what they see on the surface. And I think until, and I say this every time, until we as society start looking at mental health just like we do physical health, we will always have a disconnect. It is not weak to get therapy. I don't care what someone's told you. Just like someone had the nerve to tell me, "Oh, you didn't go into a war. You don't have PTSD." How do you know? You try being raped. You try being sexually abused. You try being molested by multiple family members. You try finding your grandmother dead. You try walking in and seeing your mom resuscitated in front of your eyes, and then being in the room when she takes her last breath. And you tell me if you're not going to have any stressors or any trauma. I have gone through a lot of trauma, and I praise God that even at 47, I was able to get not just a undergrad degree, but a master's degree, and I still have my right mind. I process different. Life is different, and it's hard for me. And I've been through the emotional abuse, sometimes from people who said they cared for me. So, yeah, for me, there's some people that I realize really don't have my back, and they really aren't my friend. There's some family members that I am not rocking with right now because they do not support me in this fight. And it would be nice to just get a phone call that said, "Hey, Lisa, I know you go through da da da. How you doing?" I bet you if I had a physical disease, they would do it. What will it take for us to get people to see that emotional abuse, mental abuse is just as damaging
Yes, it
as
is.
physical abuse? What do you think? What can we do?
Well, to start, more forums like this, where we're bringing real people who've experienced it to light. You know what I mean? And sometimes, a lot of professional terminology and language. Sometimes it's people don't want to hear that, but when you random but real, yeah, it's a little bit different because it's people that you know.
Right, right.
People who you see, and they're tangible, and what they're talking about, that you can relate to. I think
Mhm.
segments like this is really very important. um I think sharing sharing with other people and not being afraid to talk about it is really important. My children, they've gone to therapy. We talk a lot, and they share what they know with their family members who are very close-minded. They share what they know to family members who are emotionally abusive. They will tell them in a minute, "You're criticizing me. You're
Good
discounting
for
my
them.
feelings." They will say those words.
Good
I
for
don't
them.
like the way that I'm feeling. I ought to be able to say how I feel and have a difference of opinion without
Absolutely.
you telling me that there's something wrong with me. They will say that at the age of 18, 16, my 10-year-old, my 7-year-old. They are aware because I make them aware.
Good job, Mom. Good job.
And that's what we have to do. You know, we have to make sure we talk to our family members, we talk to our children, and we can't be afraid to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, you know, the more it's going to be a movement. And I think people will start to understand.
So I'm reading responses. Thank God he has shown me different. PTSD is real. I've been diagnosed by the VA with it from sexual trauma. Great conversation, ladies. Time for Bible study. We'll tune in next time. Thanks so much for joining us. Just so you all know, like Sherrell and I will talk regular. We get off of here. We get heated about our discussions. This is what random but real is. This is what I wanted to bring to you all. It's real conversations. This is how we are on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only interviewing people that I actually know. So if you're interested in being somebody that I speak to, these aren't even interviews. Basically, they're conversations. We're sharing our opinions. I am a mental health advocate, but I do not consider myself an expert. I do know a lot in the field of mental health because that's what I studied in school. But and because of counseling, I'm taught to bring in or bring out different questions. But all the guests that I have or conversations, whatever, they can answer or not answer. It's no force thing. This is informal. If they don't want to say something, they don't have to. Nobody's making them do anything. So I appreciate you, Sherrell, and all the other people that have come thus far and who will come after this, who are willing to, to actually share, share with us. Eric Isaac is on. He said, "What's up, deal buddies?" So, we just ask that you would like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe to my page. Please subscribe to, Sherrell's page. Sherrell, I want you to please give out your social media information so people can contact you.
Okay. My social media, you can find me. I am on Facebook as Sherrell Jones Whitfield. Also on Facebook at A Beautiful Anointing. I'm on Instagram as Sherrell Jones Whitfield and also as A Beautiful Anointing. You can find me on Twitter at Whitfi3. And I'm also on LinkedIn at A Beautiful Anointing.
And you should be able to. Are you able to see the chat right now live?
Me?
Yes, you. It says guest because I know the last guest was able to type in, and you should be able to.
Okay.
Okay, so can you type that there so that people can see it like right now on the screen? Dr. Brack said, "Thank you again for these conversations. I feel you all are blessing so many now in the future in our quest to overcome depression. I have to leave for Bible study. Thank you. I know 6 and 7 is going to be because of Bible study, but I appreciate you all joining. You can find me again on YouTube, 1singinglady spelled out. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, the number 1 singing lady. And so I really just want you all to, tune in. Please share this. If something we said today has helped you or helped somebody else, share this with somebody else. You can go to the broadcast, go to youtube.com and just press the share button. You share it to Facebook, YouTube. We're willing to be transparent so other people can be healed. That's important to us. And so is there anything else you want to say, Sherrell? I know you're like, dang, it just went by so fast. We don't ever get
so fast.
Get it. But what is anything else you want to say before you leave?
I can't think of anything else that I want to say that we haven't already said. I believe if anyone is experiencing emotional abuse, and you cannot recognize it, and you know that something's wrong, I think recognizing it and acknowledging it is the very first step. It's so important not to, in your mind, say that this behavior is okay. It's so important to know that it's wrong. It's so important to know that you don't deserve it. It's so important to know that there's nothing that you did to cause it. And once you know that, then you start to feel like you can't tolerate it and you shouldn't tolerate it. Then you start placing those boundaries. But if you're unsure about what you're going through,
7 o'clock.
Excuse me, my computer is talking. Make sure to get some resources. There's plenty of resources out there online. There's the domestic violence hotline. it tells you everything you need to know about domestic violence, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional, financial, um, you know, elderly. It talks about all of it. You can make sure you get some therapy. That makes a big difference. The book that I talked about, um, Verbally Abusive Relationships by Dr. Patricia Evans, I believe it is an awesome, awesome resource.
Okay.
I'm still putting in my information.
Yeah,
And
somehow you're doing it into the private chat, so don't send it there. I want to make sure everybody can see it. They can't see. It has to be the comments part. So if it doesn't show up here, I did put the domestic violence earlier before the live started. I put the number. Hopefully that shows up on the YouTube, youtube.com/ one singing lady. So this is how you can reach Sherrell. Or you can always hit me up and just ask me questions. And I'm trying to copy it into the actual regular comment so that you can see it. So please.
and once you become informed about it, share it. Just like what Lisa and I are doing. It's so important for us to share and talk about this, especially in our community. Especially, I tend to think that culturally that we reject, this information. And so I think that we need to make a change, and that change is going to start with us. We have to share. We have to share. We have to share.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's it for us today. Thank you all so much for joining. Please, send me a message. Let me know if you have any other comments, anything else you want to say. I appreciate it so very much. So thank you. We will see you all later. One
Bye.
single out. Bye bye.